Hi, everyone. Conrad Ruiz here. Welcome back to another episode of the Well Aware podcast. I'm your host, Conrad of Well Aware. Today, I have a special guest with me. Folks, I'd like to introduce you to Brad Coverdale. Brad, you run BC Data Insights. And if I'm not mistaken, if I can, try to use my own words around this, you've created a system of awareness for helping your clients and just your audience and network at large better understand their time to cash, if you will, their conversion of time to money. And specifically, you've made it clear, and I think what today's discussion is going to be about, you've made it clear what it looks like as an operation itself to understand whether or not you're putting in the time that you expect to put in successfully in order to actually create the amount of income that you're expecting. That is a bottom line representation of what you're doing.
Yes, thanks, Conrad. That's exactly a great summary, and what I call that is calendar to cash. Because ideally, what we're looking at and what you're trying to do is you're trying to get more income for less effort. When I work with my solopreneur parents, I'm trying to get them back their Friday nights, their weekends, so that they can be spending their time with their kids and not worrying about their business or worrying about what they need to do. What they need to be doing to be moving forward.
Brad, tell me a little bit about how this journey of yours started. Why did you become so focused on this particular metric?
Sure. So it actually started with my own personal story, with my own health story, because I was over 50 pounds obese, and I was one day a health coach came to me and was contacting me on LinkedIn and said, would you like to be interested in learning a new way to lose weight? Now, for me, I've been growing up with this. I've had this for almost 30 years and so I've heard all the things before. I've tried all the diets, all the exercise, etc. It just didn't work. And I was like, well, I need something that can align with me because I'm a very picky eater. I've got food aversions, all these different things that I've learned over the years. And I said, and I'm extremely busy. I'm trying to build one business while working for another, and I just don't have the time. And she's like, well, what if I can give you something that can really make it work? I can make it work within your diet, and we can move into the space. And lo and behold, I gave her a shot. And it finally, as she was explaining to me the different systems, so it wasn't just you're not eating the right food. It was no longer this, that. It was thinking about sodium intake. It was thinking about water intake, like helping to understand all of the different components that were really just kind of getting in my way. That over time, she was like, we're going to focus on one thing this week. And so we started with getting my calories down to 2,000. Then it was down to 1,900. Then I was down to 1,800. And I started to see the results of that. I was making a conscious effort. And that conscious effort she was showing me is I had to be in control of what I was eating. And as that was happening, it really started to dawn on me a little bit more of, okay, I want to have one method, one action to be able to do this. And it was even during my university presentation that I was trying to do the same thing as a decision strategist. I was trying to help my university help our leaders figure out, okay, what's the one thing they need to do to be able to reach their goal? And that led to one goal, one barrier, one action, because it wasn't just one thing that I wanted to get into to achieve. It was, what's the one thing that's going to get in my way? And what's the one action I need to take to move in that space? And as I heard that, and I was like, that's the right element. And so I started developing over the last 2 years, trying to figure out who's the right audience that needs to hear this. And as I'm going through, I'm like, well, I'm a solopreneur parent, and I'm having all of these different struggles. I can't imagine what it's like for health coaches, VAs, and others who may not have a business background, but are trying to build out that business to really understand, well, what's going on within their business. And so one thing, as I kept talking, and I realized that it's more like I was trying to think what was the right analogy, what's the right thing that people could latch onto. Because you could say people are making bad decisions. No one wants to hear that. The minute you tell them your income is not aligned with your efforts, people listen, just like a financial strategist. Someone goes to a financial strategist and says, I want to save money for college. They're not going to say immediately, that strategist isn't going to say, well, you just need to go get another job, make more money. They're going to say, let's take a look at what you're spending. Let's see where you're spending it and figure out where do we need to reallocate it so that you can get what you actually want. And far too often in our businesses, with everything that we're doing, we don't have that kind of time or capacity to do that.
I'm reminded a lot of the financial advisors sort of, double-edged sword relationship dynamic where on the one hand, they are trying to give you some healthy advice.
Mm-hmm.
On the other end, no one wants to hear
it. Of course.
I think what's different about this positioning is you're not in a financial advisory capacity. Rather, you are definitely operating within the realm of like, okay, what is a coach, right? What does a business coach or a life coach, what might they do and how might they sell themselves or market themselves in a particular way to try to, positively earn the attention of those who actually do need some external guidance and accountability and support around how they should be thinking objectively with their time and their energy. I really like that your pitch just says as a bottom line framework, you've got 24 hours a day, you've got 7 days a week. And if we can peel through and audit that time, we can look at which of those hours are directly contributing to income, which ones are indirectly contributing, which ones are leading to the blocks that generate income.
Right.
And then what's not, right? And maybe why is that? Or why do we feel there's still a certain air of importance around those blocks that don't? I imagine there is sort of a healthiness to saying, well, not every single block of time has to either be income generating or leading to income generation. There are some organizational chores that you have to commit to no matter what.
Right.
But therein lies the question of, well, based on where you are now objectively across those three potential layers, what are your expectations? Do you have an expectation to earn $100,000 this year? Okay, how does the math play out for you to actually go about that? If you were just trying to do a little bit of reverse engineering based on this price point in your offerings, based on this many hours that you have experientially received in terms of these are income producing hours. Okay, on average, how often are you able to take the hours that are meant to produce those income earning hours, those fulfillment blocks, for those who are kind of in the solopreneur framework? They're doing it all, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, so there are, now conversion metrics towards if you spend 10 hours generating income generating blocks, creating those income generating blocks, how many of those hours are actually successful on average? Is it 20%? Is it 50%? Okay, cool. Well, again, based on this math, you now know how many indirect income generating hours you need to produce on average in order to get this many income generating hours to be this busy, fulfilling, and getting paid. And then whatever it takes to actually keep those two system 1 and system 2 levels organized, here lies system 3. Here is how you keep yourself organized in an orderly fashion. Here's how you keep yourself from, losing that routine.
Yeah, no, okay. That's exactly what it is. And far too often, one of the first things that people have to recognize is they're like, well, Brad, I've got a busy calendar. And I say, I see that. I see you've got a lot of great stuff that's going on. But I say, but let me ask you this. How much of that is actually going to give you money in the next 30 days? And usually their heart usually drops, because most of the times when I've talked with people, it's 50 to 60% of the time they're doing of their time they're spending in their week is not going to get them money in the next 30 days.
Not going to get them money, not going to help them potentially earn money blocks, if you will.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. It's
just pure admin or pure non-income generating time.
Right.
And we have to ask, well, why is that? Right.
Right. And that's the challenge, is because so many times it's that dopamine effect, because it feels like, well, those are the things I really need to be doing. Those are the things I need to do. And I feel like I have something that I've done. It's done, but we don't recognize, my goodness, I spent this many hours doing that. That's hours I didn't put in toward getting people into my pipeline, hours I didn't put into trying to getting on more calls to figure out who do I need to be able to support. And it's not even just that. It's sometimes even looking at and doing an audit of who your current clients are and paying attention to how much are you getting paid per hour based on your clients. Because I have one, the amount of hours they were putting in their month, by the time we did all the math, and it was that they basically paid themselves less than if they would have been working freelance. They were running a full agency, and it would be like they were paying themselves less than if it were freelance. And so when you see those kinds of things, then it comes back to you have this limited thing called time. Here's the income that you want to get. Here are the clients that you like. Here are the clients that give you energy. Here are the clients that actually pay you better. Why are you holding on to these other clients that are draining your energy, draining your time, draining your effort, and you don't want to be working with them? And I get it. Sometimes it's they were your first client. That's wonderful. It's great. We all love our first client. We want to be loyal. We want to be respectful, especially most of my clients. Most of my clients are focusing on how can they help their clients be their best selves, improving in health, improving in wellness, losing weight, what have you. But at the end of the day, they're not focusing on their own business. And sometimes that runs into a challenge, because they could spend 2 hours at a time, 3 hours at a time trying to service a client and only charge them for like a half hour of time. That's nice, but that's charity. And last I checked, I'm not really working with I'm not working with nonprofits.
I would argue even with a nonprofit, you have to sustain the fact that you are a
Sure.
for-profit venture.
100%.
And discounts aside, I've always lived by the philosophy of, I have to put the oxygen mask on first before I can help others. And in that regard, any operation I commit to, even the most generous of operations, must be done with consideration of, am I well enough to even handle this?
Yep.
Can I afford to do this? And like, well, what am I affording? What's the cost of my living situation, yep. Right? And practice, right? That I like how this system encourages a more brass tax calculation. And it invites you not only to see, well, broadly speaking, does your general calendar audit make sense? But now, do individual commitments within, namely service delivery, right, for those offering,
right,
professional services,
yep.
Do you have a sustainable venture here?
Yep.
Or are you committing way more sweat equity than you should realistically be affording, right? Are you undercharging the amount of sweat that you're putting in? And as a result, you're no better than a market rate service. If anything, you're a steal, but the robbery is on your end. Like, you're the one who's robbing yourself, right, of being able to run the system. And, maybe you can run, to your point, this charity case, but it's not going to be with ultimate wellness to you. It's not going to meet you with the expectations that you may have financially. And just by, I think one of the tribulations we tend to go through the most is just by working harder in this same framework, things aren't going to change.
Right.
This isn't a question of just grinding out more. It's a switch of how you go about the grind in particular.
Absolutely. And that's so interesting, because that's the same thing they'll tell their own clients. My health coach told me that they'll be like, she's like, if you don't make a change, you're going to be stuck to where you are. Like, and I followed her method. I lost 30 pounds. I still have another 20 to go. Those 20 are the hardest 20. And they require even more focus and even more consistent decisions and coherent decisions. And so that's the same thing I say back to my clients. When we look at and I show them their revenue per hour, the amount of money they're actually taking home, because it can look so nice when you're like, well, okay, I've got a livable wage, you think, and then you look at all your expenses and all those pieces, and you look at the amount of time you're spending and how much of it actually that you've put in actual hours, and you can get down to $9, $10, $12 an hour that you're doing as take home. That it doesn't look like that. You look like you're making almost $100,000 a year. So you see those different things. Once you see that, you really can't unsee it. So once that happens, then it is, what are you going to do? What's going to be different in the next 12 months if you don't partner with me, if you don't have someone to help you, to walk you through? Okay, I had a client recently tell me that she said within a couple minutes, I'm criminally inefficient. This is a neuroscientist who does retreats to help others, that as soon as we started going through, and she was like, I know I've got these hours somewhere. I'm like, uh-huh, somewhere. But like, those are the kinds of things that, until you have someone walking with you, because you're so focused on your clients and doing what you need to do, that you need someone to be able to look at you externally, who can see where you want to be and show you quite simply, here's where you are, here's where you want to be, and here's what you need to do.
Power to if you figure it out on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
The education, the awareness is out there.
Sure.
What may be challenging for you is you may be caught in one of those traps where you're so used to running the current habit cycle that you are, that this new frequency of performance, this new style of alignment, it's either too foreign for you to pick it up, or it already is going to begin clashing with, your current persona, and that can be a challenge to deal with if you aren't already well equipped to adapt and change and see the need, right?
Right. 100%.
If help is available and you can afford it, then the argument should be that you would. Brad, where do you find yourself in your working with others? Where do you find yourself in sharing specific types of resources beyond just, hey, look, this is where your time and to money efficiency needs to be in order for us to make sense of the way you're spending your time? What recommendations do you make beyond just changing individual behavior? Do you tend to help your clients look for solutions outside of your world of business and consultation that are meant to say, hey, look, objectively speaking, this relationship costs this much per hour. The intention would be here that you would be replacing your hours with theirs at this price point. Here's how this finds you. What kind of recommendations do you make in that respect?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting. The more as I've been talking with this model, and the more as I've been talking with others, that there's a couple of places that have been really successful. I've had some coaches contact me before and say, Brad, could you talk with my potential clients beforehand? Because who wants to go and do a new offer, or even offer something new that's going to benefit someone, and they don't even realize that they don't even have the capacity for it. They don't even have the time or the effort and such to make it. And so they go and try this new program, and then they say, well, it wasn't successful. And that's not helpful for a coach who's like, I've built this out to help you get new leads, to help you drive new sales, those pieces, you just weren't ready. And so they will contact me and say, Brad, let's help them to walk through where they need to be at. We need to have a good understanding, so I can understand and they can understand what's realistic. Because what feels better, actually taking on the right clients and not having a chargeback, or taking a chance and saying, here's what I have, here's what's available to me, and I should say, and having the clients and basically having as many clients as possible, but most of them won't be successful. It doesn't make you feel good as a coach. It doesn't make them feel good as a client. Like, it's just not a good vibe. And all it took was someone to come in and basically do an audit beforehand to say, this is what's available to them. Now, to that same point, there are going to be those, and I've got several different partners that I refer to, that they say, well, Brad, I've got a lot of extra things I need to have happen. And once they've made that conscious decision, that's when I pop in and say, okay, now you're ready for a VA. Now you're ready for someone into that space. Because I caution, it's kind of similar to a balance transfer. You can have a lot of debt on a credit card. You do a balance transfer, but you don't change your behavior. Before you know it, you've got two sets of debt you're now dealing with. Versus, and this happens sometimes as well, I've noticed, is that some people will hire a VA or a team to help them to take some of the load off. but then they don't fill it back with income driving activities. They'll fill it back with other things that they think they need to be doing with their business, which is the same thing they already hired someone else to be doing to start with.
Mm. I'm on the coaching
Mm-hmm.
example. I'm one thing I find always very interesting about a provider relationship is that we all presume to a certain degree, especially in services, that the done for you relationships
Mm-hmm.
are truly 100% done for you.
Mm-hmm.
That as soon as the money comes out of your wallet, the service gets delivered and no additional administrative cost needs to be put out on your end. I find that to be inherently untrue. There's always going to be, in addition to the monetary cost of these relationships, there's also going to be an administrative cost
Sure.
of you're now managing with that vendor,
Mm-hmm.
you're now working alongside that provider, you're receiving those experiences. And those are non-income driven activities. But they're meant to, I think in your case, again, they're meant to create income driven focus. They're meant to create the accountability that there will be income driven activity. And that is part of the ultimate challenge of every provider in kind, to be able to say, look, I know this is a financial cost, and I understand that there may be certain administrative costs associated with that financial cost.
Yep.
But all of this has to relay back to a return on investment that you can yourself calculate without too much effort. Granted, you should be able to see it right on your calendar. That's where it's always going to end up showing up.
Yep.
Principally, if we're talking about lead generation, it's going to be there are leads on your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to administratively cost time there, but that's going to eventually lead to income-driven activity on a certain conversion basis. Again, pipelines. Whereas, again, in your case, or in a VA's case even, you've got, hey, now that these non-income driven activities are no longer bothering you, now you have the room to be organized with only income driven activity and work. Mm-hmm. And again, you can literally run the calculations yourself as to, when that turnaround point is of, I spent this much here at this time. I started auditing my calendar. I now know that my calendar was working in this design structure. Now it's working in this new design structure. And as a result, I have more income being brought in on average. And I can see it. I can actually watch the factory, if you will, of myself, of my time.
Absolutely.
Cool. Brad, what is one major takeaway you would like to share at large at this time?
The biggest thing I always tell everyone is, if you're not in charge of your calendar is going to be in charge of you. And it is already predicting your income. It already knows what your income is going to be if you don't make conscious changes. And that's really the driving factor. So often I tell people is that you don't have a price problem, you don't have a sales problem. You usually have a structure problem. And once you see it, you really can't unsee it.
Brad, how can people contact you?
Yeah, I have a great app that you can to look out. It's calendar, the number 2, cash.com. And that's where our landing page is. You can go there and get a free application to actually be able to track your time in the different zones that we talked about. And you can also feel free to sign up for a 15-minute diagnostic audit with me, and we can take a look and calculate what your number is.
And that diagnostic option is available by going to calendartocash.com and selecting the option as it's present there?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Brad, grateful for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.